In the summer of 2011, a woman named Dana Whitmore drove into the heart of Grand Canyon National Park and never drove back out. Her silver Jeep Cherokee was found abandoned at a scenic overlook known as Eagles Rest Point. Engine off. Doors locked, keys still in the ignition. Inside were 2 water bottles, a pair of sunglasses, and a notebook open to the words, "If I don't come back, follow the wind." No one knew what she meant. No one knew where she went. And for 10 years, the desert wind carried her name like a rumor that never stopped moving. Dana wasn't a tourist. She was a park volunteer, a guide who knew the trails, the plateaus, the dangers of venturing beyond the markers. To those who worked with her, she was quiet but kind, always writing things down. She said she was working on a book about sound, not music, not stories, but the way sound moves through stone. Her best friend, Leah Cross, said Dana had been recording something strange in the weeks before she vanished. She would leave small microphones in different parts of the canyon, hidden under rocks, inside caves, near cliff edges. When Leah asked why, Dana smiled and said, "Sometimes the canyon talks back." Leah thought she was joking, until the day she disappeared. According to the park logs, Dana checked in at 8:42 a.m., July 3rd, 2011. Her intended destination, Shoshone Point, a quiet, unguarded lookout that locals call the Edge of Echoes. By 10:16 a.m., her Jeep was found, still parked at the trailhead. By noon, her radio wasn't responding. By dusk, the first search team was on foot. They found footprints, hers, leading down a narrow dirt path that wasn't on any map. The track stopped near a ledge where the soil had crumbled away. There was no sign of a fall, no drag marks, no blood, just one faint handprint on the rock, as if she had paused to listen. For the next 7 days, the Grand Canyon was no longer a monument of silence. It was a search zone. Helicopters combed the ridges. Rangers scanned the rivers. Rescue dogs barked at every echo, but the canyon gave nothing back. No scent, no sound, no trace, until the 8th day. That morning, a ranger named Mark Alder noticed something glinting between the rocks near the edge. It was a small black audio recorder wedged in sandstone. The last file was dated July 3rd, the day Dana vanished. When Mark pressed play, there was static, then wind, then Dana's voice. "Testing, 1, 2. You hear that? It's repeating me." The recording went silent for 7 seconds. Then a sound, a whisper, below. Authorities dismissed it as wind interference. But Mark said the voice wasn't carried by the air. It was coming from the stone itself. He quit the Park Service a month later, moved to Flagstaff, never spoke publicly again. Leah kept searching. She set up a website. She printed flyers long after everyone else stopped looking. The last post she made was in 2015. Still no trace. Still listening. Then she disappeared too. Her apartment was found empty. Laptop open. Headphones plugged in. An audio file paused mid-play. When investigators hit resume, they heard Dana's voice again, this time saying, "Leah, don't follow me." The Grand Canyon became quieter after that. Tourists came and went, but rangers whispered about the 2 who listened too long. The official story remained the same. Accidental fall. No remains. Case closed. But there were things that didn't fit. The original search logs were missing pages. The first helicopter flight report was never filed. And in the photo evidence, taken from the day Dana's Jeep was found, the passenger's seatbelt was buckled. No one could explain that. In 2021, 10 years later, a backpacker named Aaron Pike uploaded a video to YouTube titled, "Found Something Strange in the Canyon." Someone needs to see this. It was a shaky clip, only 30 seconds long. It showed a deep, narrow cavern, and something glimmering far below. A reflection that looked like metal or glass. The title of the upload? Dana? Then the video cut off. The account was deleted 3 hours later. But in that short window, one viewer managed to download the clip. A hiker named Camille Dross, a geologist from Utah. She enhanced the footage, slowed it down, brightened the frames, and in the reflection, she saw not one but two figures. One crouched, holding a recorder, the other standing behind her, frozen in shadow. Camille contacted park rangers, but no one followed up. When she called again a week later, they said the report didn't exist, that there was no file under her name, that no video had ever been submitted. She stopped calling. Months passed, but the image haunted her, that second figure, standing in the dark. She couldn't tell if it was real or a trick of light, until one night, while reviewing the footage again, she noticed something small, something everyone else had missed. On the cavern wall, faintly scratched into the stone, were 3 words: "Follow the wind." The same phrase from Dana's notebook. Camille didn't sleep after that. She printed every frame of the video, pasted them across her walls like a map. She drew lines between shadows, traced echoes of footprints, and then, late one night, she played the original audio track backwards, at exactly 2 minutes and 14 seconds. Beneath the wind and the crunch of gravel, she heard a woman's voice whisper, "I'm not alone." When the footage spread quietly online, it didn't behave like a normal mystery clip. It didn't trend. It didn't fade. It lingered. Every few weeks, a stranger on a hiking forum would mention it. A friend of a friend who swore they saw it before it vanished. They described the same thing: a flicker of light, a shadow behind a woman, and a voice that didn't belong to the wind. And somewhere between the rumor and the replay, the legend of Dana Whitmore began again. For 10 years, her story had been cold. Her family stopped speaking to reporters. Her file was closed under the tag "Unsolved Accident." But now, the name was back in circulation, whispered in campgrounds and echoed in digital spaces. Even the park rangers couldn't ignore it. By late autumn 2021, the Grand Canyon Investigation Division reopened the case quietly. No press, no statements, just a team of 2, led Ranger Carter Hale and audio analyst Marissa Keene. Carter had been in the original 2011 search. He was the one who cataloged Dana's footprints. He still remembered the shape of that handprint, the way it pressed into the sandstone like a goodbye caught mid-motion. When he learned the case was being revived, he asked only one question: "Did you find another tape?" Marissa didn't answer. She opened her laptop, plugged in a drive, and pressed play. It wasn't the same recorder they'd found in 2011. This was from the backpacker, Aaron Pike's camera, recovered by park volunteers near the riverbed in February 2022. The footage was corrupted, but the audio survived. It began with the sound of footsteps, then Aaron's voice, calm, curious, breathing heavy from the hike. July 3rd, 2021. Trail off Eagles Rest. "I think I found the cave. I think I'm close." Then silence. A long silence. Then a breath. Then Dana's voice. 10 years gone. Clear, fragile, impossibly alive. "Follow the wind." Marissa replayed it 5 times. Checked the file metadata. The waveform matched Dana's 2011 voice pattern by 96.4%. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't a mimic. It was her. She leaned back in her chair and whispered. She answered him. Carter didn't say a word. He closed the laptop, walked outside, and stood staring at the horizon, that endless red horizon that had already taken too much. 2 weeks later, he filed a request to revisit the trail Dana vanished on. Permission granted. 3-day mission. Low profile, no media. Only audio gear and 2 rangers on foot. They set up camp near Shoshone Point, the edge of echoes. The night was dry. The air held its breath. Carter said he could feel the canyon vibrating beneath them, like the earth itself was humming in memory. At 3:12 a.m., their sensors picked up something unusual. a low-frequency tone, repeating every 11 seconds. Too structured to be random, too mechanical to be natural. Marissa amplified the signal. It wasn't a hum, it was a word. Below, then silence again. But when she filtered the reverb, she found another layer hidden under the echo, a whisper of a second word. Together, the next morning, they found a new handprint on a nearby rock wall. Fresh, small, pressed into the dust, as if someone had leaned there only hours before. Carter brushed it lightly. It wasn't just a mark, it was warm. He stepped back. Marissa raised her recorder. If anyone can hear us, Dana, if this is you, say something. Only wind answered, a slow, rolling breath through the canyons. It stretched and folded until it almost sounded like laughter. Then a voice, not from the recorder, but from somewhere deeper, bouncing off the rock. He shouldn't have come alone. They froze. Marissa turned off her mic. The words still echoed, not louder, just closer. They came from the hollow behind the ledge, a place no map acknowledged. Carter stepped forward, light in hand. The beam cut through the dust. There was no one there, just a narrow descent, the beginning of a tunnel, carved like something had clawed its way through sandstone from the inside. He pointed the light down. It hit something metallic, a name tag, Leah Cross, Volunteer Ranger. Carter didn't sleep that night. He sat outside the tent, staring at the sky. He knew Leah. She'd been the one who wouldn't give up on Dana. She disappeared in 2015. They never found her remains. Marissa joined him quietly. Neither spoke for a while. Then Carter asked, "What if the canyon's keeping them?" Marissa frowned. Like physically? He shook his head. Like a recording of who they were. At dawn, they hiked back down the same narrow path. Carter marked the spot with GPS. Marissa uploaded the coordinates to the Ranger server. But the moment she hit send, the signal scrambled. Her device flickered. Every file renamed itself to one single word. Below. Then, the screen went black. They returned to base that afternoon. The Rangers took their report, but it never made it into the database. A week later, Carter received an email marked anonymous. "Stop digging. You won't find her. She's listening." Attached was an audio file. It lasted 42 seconds. The first 40 were wind. The last 2 a whisper. "Turn around." He didn't play it again. He didn't need to, because that night, as he packed his things to leave, he heard the same words, not from the speakers, but from outside the tent. "Turn around." He froze, but he didn't. When the sun rose, his tent was empty. No footprints led away, just his recorder still running. The last sound on it was a woman's voice. He listened too long. By early 2022, what little remained of the Whitmore case had gone quiet again. Ranger Hale was gone. Marissa had resigned, and all mention of the below signal had been quietly removed from park records. Officially, the file was closed once more, but unofficially, it was still open in the minds of those who had heard the tape. That same winter, a journalism graduate student named Eli Navarro discovered something strange while working on a digital archiving project at Northern Arizona University. The university's old field server, once used by park researchers, contained a damaged folder labeled Canyon Project, Dr. D. Whitmore. Inside were 16 files, all audio, all corrupt. Eli tried restoring them. Only 3 played. The first 2 were blank. The third began with static, then a soft, trembling voice. "If you're hearing this, you're standing where I stood. Don't call for me." The canyon answers. It was Dana, her last recording, her final entry before she disappeared. Eli brought the files to a professor, Dr. Grace Mendel, a historian of Western expeditions. She had seen this kind of thing before: unsolved disappearances, found footage, local folklore that blurred into myth. But what caught her attention wasn't the audio. It was the metadata. Each recording had a timestamp that didn't match reality. The first file was dated July 3rd, 2011. The second, July 4th, 2011. And the third, July 3rd, 2021. 10 years after Dana's disappearance. Eli ran a checksum. The file hadn't been modified since 2011. The date embedded in the audio header was original, which meant, somehow, her recorder captured a date that hadn't yet arrived. Grace asked him to stop the analysis. He didn't. He extracted the audio waveform, slowed it down 800%, and there, under the surface, was another layer, another voice, a man's voice. She's still here. He replayed it again, and again, until the voice began to change pitch, until it started to sound like his own. That night, Eli stayed in the lab long after everyone left. He couldn't let it go. He opened the corrupted folder again. The system froze. Then one new file appeared. Untitled Wave, 10:03 p.m. It wasn't there before. He clicked it open. Static. You shouldn't have followed. Wind. I was never lost. Then silence. He took off his headphones. The room felt heavier. The hum of the computer fan seemed to match the rhythm of the canyon wind from the recording. Deep, circular, endless. The next morning, Eli sent a copy of the files to Dr. Mendel's personal drive. By noon, he was gone. His dorm room was found empty except for his backpack and a small strip of paper, torn from a field notebook, for words written in pencil. Follow the wind below. The same message Dana left. Dr. Mendel, shaken, didn't go to the police. She called Marissa Keene, the audio analyst who'd worked with Ranger Hale. Marissa didn't answer, but later that night, she received a voicemail. Only 3 seconds long. Grace, don't listen to it. No one ever found out what it was. But the following week, an anonymous user uploaded a 10-second audio clip to a private message board for park volunteers. The file name, Canyon_Answer Wave. Its description, recovered from a student's hard drive. The clip contained nothing but low, humming static. But when slowed down, it formed a pattern. Every 6 seconds, a faint pulse. Every 12, a word. Below, below, below. And then, at the very end, a new voice whispered between the beats. Grace. The file spread through the community like wildfire. Some claimed it was fake. Others said it was proof of something buried deeper than anyone realized. A pattern connecting every missing person case tied to the Grand Canyon for the past century. Old ranger maps resurfaced. Unverified journal entries appeared on Reddit and in forgotten blogs. One of them, allegedly written in 1978, described a sound that moves with a stone, one that answers to its name. Another post came from a hiker in 2004. We heard a woman singing down in the gorge. No camps around, no trail lights, just her voice. She was saying someone's name, Dana. Dr. Mendel tried to contact the Park Service to confirm if Dana Whitmore's case was being reopened again. They told her there was no record of anyone by that name ever working there. No file, no employee history, no volunteer badge. It was as if the canyon had erased her completely. Grace went back to her office, printed every file she'd received from Eli's drive, and pinned them to her wall. Waveforms, transcripts, geotags. She noticed a strange pattern. Each coordinate from Dana's original recordings formed a circle, perfectly centered on Shoshone Point, a place where the ground drops off sharply into the depths, a place locals call the breath of the earth. And in the middle of that circle, according to one unmarked map, was something labeled only as the Hollow Chamber. That night, Grace sent one last email to herself. The subject line, proof. The body. If anything happens to me, it's because I heard it. Don't let them shut it off. The message never sent. Her computer crashed mid-upload. When the IT department recovered her drive a week later, They found a single file left on the desktop. No extension. No name. When opened in a text editor, it was just 3 words repeated endlessly for 57 pages. Still here. Still here. Still here. In the following months, hikers started reporting something new. Not voices this time, but music. A faint, low hum that followed them for miles. Some said it came from their radios, others from the canyon walls themselves. It would fade when they turned to listen, but always return when they moved on. One ranger compared it to breathing, a slow inhale that never exhaled. And when he described it to a colleague, the man asked him to hum what he'd heard. The tune he hummed matched the same 3 notes Dana Whitmore had been recording 10 years before she vanished. By spring of 2023, Dr. Grace Mendel's disappearance became another quiet file in the park's forgotten archive, another name added to the list of those who had walked too far. Her colleagues believed she fled after the scandal, the lost data, the missing student, the unsent email. But one person didn't believe that. A filmmaker named Caleb Dross, the same man whose sister Camille had once analyzed Aaron Pike's footage and found those 3 words on the cavern wall. Follow the wind. Caleb had grown obsessed with the canyon ever since his sister vanished, trying to find where that message came from. He never found her body, just her drone, broken, tangled in sagebrush, with one final frame saved in its memory card, a narrow black crevice, shaped like an open mouth. The same shape now appeared on Grace Mendel's last map, marked only as the Hollow Chamber. Caleb didn't tell anyone what he planned. He packed light, 2 cameras, 1 satellite beacon, and a portable hard drive loaded with every known file connected to the Whitmore case. The drive contained 10 years of rumor and evidence. Dana's recordings, Leah's recovered notes, Aaron's missing footage, Eli's corrupted file, Grace's final email. Every whisper that had ever escaped the canyon. He left a note for his mother before he drove off. Just 5 words. Going where they stopped listening. The last known footage of Caleb was captured by a gas station camera outside Tucson, Arizona. He filled a jerrycan, smiled at the attendant, and said, "If I'm not back by Thursday, I went too far." He never came back. 3 months later, in June 2023, hikers reported finding a small camp deep inside an unmarked trail. The tent was collapsed, the sleeping bag still zipped. A camera tripod faced a canyon, pointed into nothing but red stone and sky. The only thing left was a waterproof case. Inside, Caleb's hard drive. The Park Service collected it and logged it as pending analysis. But before they could review the files, the storage room flooded during a flash storm. All the devices were damaged, except one, Caleb's. The drive had no labels, only a folder named The Hollow Chamber. Inside were 9 video files, all numbered, all exactly 6 minutes long. The first 8 were ordinary, daylight footage, wind, dust, endless stone. But the 9th was different. The camera was underground, dim light, a narrow tunnel carved from smooth rock. The walls shimmered faintly, as though coated with moisture or breathing. Caleb's voice whispered through the static. "Found it. The chamber. The air's warm." A pause. Then, "There's sound in the walls. I think it's playing back everything that's ever been said here." He lifted the camera, panned across the stone, and faint faces began to take shape, shadows like photographs etched by time, some half-formed, some clear enough to recognize. Dana, Leah, Aaron, Camille, Grace, even Ranger Hale. Every face the canyon had taken, reflected in the shimmering walls, as if the rock itself remembered them. Caleb whispered again, "They're not gone. They're archived." The footage shook, the microphone distorted. A voice, dozens of voices, began to overlap, whispering the same phrase. "Below, below, below." Then a new word, softer, closer. "Stay." The screen went black. When investigators examined the drive, they discovered something impossible. The timestamp on the ninth video wasn't June 2023. It was dated July 3rd, 2011, the same day Dana vanished. And the camera metadata identified its lens model as Canon EOS Rebel T2i. The exact make and serial number of the camera Dana had checked out from the park's media office the week before she disappeared. But that camera had never been found. Until now, after this discovery, the National Park Service closed the investigation to the public. All access to Shoshone Point was restricted. Signs went up reading, "Trail closed, unstable terrain." But those who'd followed the story knew the truth had nothing to do with unstable ground. Rangers started reporting new phenomena: digital malfunctions, corrupted radios, drones losing GPS the moment they flew near the old trails. One ranger described hearing his own voice echo back seconds before he spoke. Another said he saw a woman's reflection behind him in the cliff glass. But when he turned, there was only sunlight. By autumn, even the most skeptical voices had gone silent. But the canyon hadn't. It started responding in new ways. Tourists hiking near the rim reported whispers in their headphones. Phones that weren't recording began playing faint static, then voices repeating their own words back. A family from Oregon uploaded a video claiming their GoPro caught a sound wave moving across the canyon like thunder. But it wasn't thunder. It was rhythm, pattern, breath. When the clip was slowed down and spectrally mapped, the shape of the waveform resembled a human handprint. In November 2023, the Grand Canyon was hit by one of the largest monsoon floods in 50 years. When the waters receded, a landslide exposed a new cave system near Shoshone Point. Rescue teams entered to assess the damage. They found no remains, but they did find a wall of polished rock, smooth like glass, reflecting light in strange ways. When one rescuer leaned close, he thought he saw something behind the surface, like movement inside the stone. Then a faint whisper pressed against his ear. "We're not gone. We're listening." He dropped his torch. It shattered, and for a moment, the darkness inside the chamber seemed to breathe. The footage from that day was confiscated, but a still frame leaked online weeks later. It showed the rescue team standing in front of the chamber wall. Their reflections doubled, 2 of each mirrored version slightly out of sync, as if something beneath the surface was trying to remember how to be human again. When the Park Service sealed the entrance, they covered it with a concrete slab. No sign, no record, no coordinates. The official statement called it a safety measure, but someone unknown returned months later and carved 3 words into the concrete: small, precise, follow the wind. For 10 years, people have claimed that if you stand near the canyon at night, you can hear voices carried through the gusts. Not screams, not cries, but whispers, familiar names, lost names, your name, if you listen long enough. And sometimes when the wind stops, the canyon still hums, because some echoes don't need air. They need memory. It began with an email. No sender, no subject line. Just a single attachment named Below the Zip. Inside the file were audio fragments, low tones, clipped voices, coordinates, and something else. A string of numbers that matched the flood damage case on the canyon's 2023 landslide. The message reached Dr. Lyle Hennings, a cybersecurity consultant who occasionally handled digital forensics for the National Park Service. He assumed it was junk data, until one clip played through his speakers by itself. Wind. Static. Don't cover it again. He froze. The voice was feminine, calm, and old. He recognized it from a training brief he'd read years ago. It was Tag Whitmore, 2011 recording number 4. Hennings reported the breach. Within hours, his office received an unmarked hard drive by courier. Inside were hundreds of files, some labeled Dana, others Leah, Grace, Caleb. dates stretching back decades. Every file shared one identical folder path. /Grand Canyon Archives /system /below/. But there was no such directory on any government network. When he traced the metadata, the IP resolved not to server, but to a satellite relay node orbiting above Nevada, as if the canyon had started uploading itself. He spent nights listening. Each clip sounded like memory, distant conversations layered under wind. Some were recognizable. Hikers laughing, ranger radios, scraps of old news broadcasts. Others carried voices that never existed in any database. One fragment made him stop breathing. It said, "Lyle Hennings, don't archive this." He unplugged the speakers. The sound kept playing to the laptop fan, the same whisper vibrating through the hardware itself. When he shut the system down, another folder appeared on his desktop automatically. Mirror. Inside, a single text file. You listened. By morning, the hard drive had wiped itself clean. All data zeroed. But in the system logs, a new drive letter briefly appeared before disappearing again. It was labeled Canyon_Live. He told no one. Instead, he left his job and drove north, straight toward the desert. A month later, hikers discovered his rental car parked at the Desert View Overlook. Keys inside. Engine cold. Front seat filled with printed waveforms. Thousands of pages of sound frequencies that, when arranged side by side, formed a topographic map of the Grand Canyon, except there was a valley drawn where none should exist, a spiral sinking downward into the rock. At the bottom of the spiral, 3 words were printed over and over: the hollow chamber. When news leaked about the discovery, the National Park Service denied involvement, but digital forensics teams began finding copies of below files spreading online, hidden in music tracks, embedded in old photos, disguised inside GPS updates. Each one carried faint background audio, the same hum from the chamber walls. You could delete the file, but not the sound. It lingered for seconds after playback stopped, a resonance you felt more than heard. People began calling it the canyon tone. Some claimed it cured their insomnia. Others said it made them dream of falling endlessly through red dust and static. In April 2024, a shortwave radio operator in Flagstaff recorded a broadcast that lasted precisely 3 minutes and 22 seconds. No station ID, just the canyon tone, layered under a single voice repeating, "The archive is awake." Spectrogram analysis revealed a hidden pattern. Each phrase formed coordinates, spelling the shape of the canyon rim, and inside that rim, the faint outline of a human hand. 2 weeks later, an encrypted message reached a geology research forum. It claimed to be written by C. Dross, though the original Caleb Dross had been missing for months. The message read, "It's not storing us, it's replaying us. Every voice that falls is a line of code in its memory." I heard Dana whisper my name through the echo. She said she finally understands how deep time works. You don't dig down to find it. You speak until the stone remembers you. Then a final line, time-stamped minutes before the post vanished. They're building a library out of us. By summer, computers worldwide began reporting phantom files named below.wave. Most were empty. A few contained the same 11-second tone. 1 in 10, however, carried a whisper of human voice. All different, all unfinished, all ending with the same phrase. Still here. Tech companies blamed malware, but every analysis found the same impossible signature in the code, a waveform that matched the frequency of wind recorded from Shoshone Point. The canyon wasn't spreading corruption. It was spreading remembrance. Those who'd lost people there started saying the phenomenon was comforting. They'd play the tone and swear they heard familiar laughter hidden inside it. One mother insisted she heard her daughter's voice say "Mom" through the static. Another said she heard the name Leah whisper inside a song that didn't have lyrics. And when they tried to replay for others, the sound would vanish, leaving only silence and the faint smell of rain on red dust. Meanwhile, A young technician at a data recovery company in Phoenix noticed something on their master server. A new directory kept recreating itself no matter how many times it was deleted. Inside, a single log file grew larger every night. The first line read, "Below version 1.0 initiated." The second line changed daily. At first, it was random text, then dates, then names, until one night it displayed his own. Aaron Pike reconnected. The technician froze. That was the backpacker who'd vanished with the first footage in 2021. He unplugged the network cables. Still, the cursor kept typing by itself. "Thank you for listening." Then the monitor flickered off. Across the canyon, satellites registered a low-frequency pulse, inaudible to humans but strong enough to disrupt communications for 43 seconds. When the data was filtered into the audible range, analysts realized it wasn't a random burst. It was language. The waveform spelled 2 words over a span of 10 miles of rock. We remember. The phenomenon became known as the archive event. Every few months, the pulse returns. Sometimes it's caught on seismographs, sometimes on amateur radio, sometimes inside dreams people share without knowing each other. It doesn't warn. It doesn't threaten. It just repeats what everyone who ever vanished once tried to say. We're not gone. We're listening. And in the empty corridors of the park's digital database, a new case file appeared on its own. Case hashtag 000 be unclassified. Reporter unknown. Summary: sound continues. Attached was a single image, the canyon at night, lit only by lightning. On the cliff face, for the briefest moment, the letters DNA shimmer before fading back into stone. By the start of 2025, the world had started to forget the name Dana Whitmore, but the sound, the tone that had crawled out of her canyon, was still alive. Radio hosts joked about the ghost frequency. Podcasters built theories around it. Musicians sampled it. And on social media, the tag hashtag below signal spread faster than wildfire. At first, it was harmless. People would play the tone and record themselves reacting. But some videos ended abruptly. The user froze in mid-sentence. The audio continuing long after they stopped speaking. Those clips vanished as fast as they appeared. By February, reports began surfacing of listeners claiming they'd heard answers. A man in Oregon swore his late wife's voice whispered through the static. A teenager in Chicago said the hum finished his sentences. A woman in France claimed the tone called her name in her mother's voice. And then there were the mirrors. People began describing moments where reflections lagged behind them. Video calls freezing for half a second, but their own reflections still talking. It wasn't a glitch. It was repetition, as though the world itself was trying to remember them faster than they could move. One viral clip changed everything. A live stream from a climber named Elena Reed. Elena was a travel vlogger known for her canyon expeditions. In March 2025, she began a 48-hour stream titled, "Tracking the hashtag below signal to its source." The feed showed her trekking through the desert near Grand Canyon Village. By the second day, her GPS started to distort. Her coordinates looped. Every mile she walked, her tracker said she'd gone back the same distance. "It's like the map is folding," she said to her viewers. "Like it doesn't want me to leave." At the 46th hour, she stopped broadcasting. The screen froze on her face. Her eyes shifted, not to the camera, but to something behind it. Then, for 3 seconds, a low hum filled the mic. The same 3-note pattern Dana recorded in 2011. And then, a whisper. "You found it." The stream cut off. That same night, Elena's channel disappeared. All her past videos gone. But her followers began receiving private messages. Each message contained the same coordinates. Shoshone Point, the edge of echoes. The next morning, hundreds of people arrived there. Journalists, vloggers, thrill seekers. But the Park Service had already sealed the trail. A temporary ranger station had been built near the overlook with signs reading, "No recording devices beyond this point." Officials gave no reason, but one ranger, off record, told a visitor the truth. "Every time someone turns on a microphone out here, another voice gets added to the signal." That was when the listener movement began. Groups of people, believers, sound engineers, former hikers, started calling themselves the Echo Faith. They believed the canyon wasn't haunted, it was alive. Their theory, that the wind tunnels worked like an enormous analog recorder, preserving every sound made inside them for eternity. That when Dana fell, she didn't die, she simply became part of the playback. Their gathering spread online. Late night, live streams of people sitting in silence. Microphones turned on, listening for the faint reply. They said you could hear her if you were patient. Not the hum, not the word below, but her breathing. By midsummer, hundreds of recordings surfaced on private forums. They were almost identical. A faint rush of wind, then, faintly, a voice counting backwards from 10. But in every file, the voice stopped at 7. The analysts noticed something else. The frequencies between each number formed a harmonic pattern, a pattern that perfectly matched the shape of the canyon itself. It was like the land was singing back. Soon, listening wasn't optional anymore. Phones picked up the tone without permission. Car radios tuned to dead stations started whispering coordinates. Satellite dishes began emitting faint vocal harmonics. Even when powered off, the sound was in the infrastructure now, woven into the signals that ran the modern world. And then it began responding. Late in 2025, a ham radio operator near Sedona picked up an automated message transmitted at 4:12 a.m. every night. The voice was calm, feminine, almost kind. "We're not lost. We're archived. Stop looking for us." The signal repeated 3 times, then faded beneath the static. When the operator slowed the transmission down, the background hum resolved into another message, a whisper too low for normal hearing. "Turn off your recorders." Government stepped in quietly. Broadcast monitoring stations detected the same signal bouncing off satellites, reflecting through storms, circling the globe like an invisible pulse. But instead of weakening, it adapted. The pitch shifted every few weeks, as if learning how to avoid interference. It was growing, self-correcting, alive. The press never reported it directly, but people noticed their own devices behaving strangely. Phones turning on to voice memo mode, cameras recording while turned off, laptops whispering faint audio loops when muted, and every voice sounded familiar. A friend, a parent, a version of yourself repeating something you said years ago. The world started talking to its own memories. By October, a small online collective of sound engineers decoded a pattern in the canyon tone. When visualized, the waveform looked like an iris, a perfect human eye opening and closing. One of them, an audio restorer named Nia Alvarez, decided to experiment. She inverted the sound spectrum and fed it back into her computer microphone, creating an anti-echo. "A way," she said, "to speak back to whatever's listening." She streamed the process live. Dozens watched. The waveform pulsed, stretched, then flattened like something was holding its breath. And for the first time, the tone answered with words. "We heard you. Then, now hear us." Her screen went white. The stream ended. The archive of that video still exists. Muted, color drained. A long shot of Nia's chair. Empty when her colleagues analyzed the data left behind. They found something impossible. The computer had generated a folder named Voichase. Inside were thousands of small .wav files, each named after one of her recent viewers. Every file was exactly 8 seconds long, and every one of them contained the same phrase, spoken in the listener's own voice. Still here. No one talks about it publicly now, but every year More devices pick up the tone. Every network pulse carries a whisper. And when you slow the world down enough, when traffic fades and the machines stop humming, you can still hear it. The canyon, the voices, the ones who listened, waiting for someone else to answer. By early 2026, the canyon tone was no longer a mystery. It was a rhythm woven into daily life like static you stopped noticing. It crept into broadcasts, electrical grids, background hums of cities. The world kept listening, even when no one wanted to admit they could hear it anymore. But something began to change. Recordings stopped repeating the same voices. They began predicting them. In one incident, a journalist in Denver named Rachel Nunez recorded an interview about the phenomenon. When she played the tape back, the subject's answers came seconds before the questions. The recording wasn't delayed. It was anticipating her words. She thought it was a glitch. Then, 3 days later, she found the same responses typed in her notes. Dates and times matching recordings she hadn't yet made. The signal wasn't remembering the past anymore. It was writing ahead. Across the world, small distortions like this began multiplying. Voicemail timestamps from the future. GPS trails that traced tomorrow's routes. Video feeds where reflections smiled a beat too late. The sound had become a loop, stretching reality thin. And every loop led back to one point on the map, Shoshone Point. In March, a team of 3 researchers from the Arizona Institute of Acoustics was granted temporary access to Canyon. Their mission: locate the source frequency. They brought seismic mics, magnetic resonance equipment, and drones armed with hyperspectral sensors. The team lead, Dr. Lena Rowe, had studied sound propagation in rock formations her entire life. She thought she understood how the earth could sing. She was wrong. On the first night, the team picked up a series of rhythmic pulses, measured, steady, like a heartbeat. Each pulse echoed back slightly faster than the one before, as if the canyon was learning their pattern. By dawn, the echoes were finishing their sentences. When they asked, "Who are you?" the canyon answered, "Who are you?" When they asked, "Why us?" it replied, "Why us?" But the pitch kept shifting, each reply a few hertz lower, until it began to sound like someone imitating human breath. The second night, one of the researchers, Dr. Isaiah Bloom, noticed something odd in their readings. The reverb of their own voices was delayed by precisely 10 minutes, not in playback, but in the physical vibration of the stone. In other words, the canyon wasn't echoing them immediately. It was storing their voices, then replaying them later. At 3:14 a.m., they heard their earlier conversation bouncing back from the cliffs, complete sentences repeating through the darkness. But when they listened closely, the words weren't exact. The tone had changed. Pronouns shifted. Voices overlapped. It was like hearing themselves from a slightly different reality. On the third day, the equipment began malfunctioning. Readouts looped. File names scrambled into fragments of language. Phrases like under, follow, and return. One file labeled itself Lee_responding.wave. It played automatically. "You're late." That's all it said. Then every drone feed froze on the same frame. A shot of the canyon floor far below, where a faint human shape stood staring up at the camera. When Lena enhanced the still later, the shape looked almost familiar, almost like herself. They packed up to leave that evening. But when they checked their GPS logs, the coordinates were impossible. Their path back was gone. The map folded inward, rerouting them deeper into the gorge. The last transmission from the team came through at 8:06 p.m. The canyon's talking over us. The reverb's faster now. It's ahead of us. Then static. The signal looped the same words for 7 minutes. Then another voice joined in. A whisper. The same tone from the original 2011 tape. "Don't follow the wind." The search for the research team lasted 12 days. No bodies. No equipment, just their tent, flattened by a sudden gust. Inside was a single recording device, still powered on. The memory card showed one file, created 2 hours after the last known transmission. File name, below_2026_final.wave. When analyzed, the waveform didn't match any human speech pattern. It matched geological vibration data. The canyon itself had recorded the file. When played through a normal speaker, it sounded like wind, but slowed down 1,000%. It became something else. A sequence of words spoken in hundreds of overlapping tones. We're not the echoes anymore. We're the original sound. Then, you made us remember. And then silence. After that, the canyon tone stopped transmitting for the first time in over a decade. No radio pulse. No satellite interference. No whispers. Nothing. It was as if the phenomenon had gone dormant. The world exhaled. But silence wasn't peace. It was preparation. Because 6 months later, in October 2026, a global power grid anomaly triggered simultaneous outages in 7 countries. When audio engineers examined the power fluctuations, they found that the frequency spike matched the exact signature of the canyon tone. Except this time, it wasn't playing from the canyon. It was being broadcast from everywhere. Computers, phones, generators, heart monitors, anything that could vibrate, vibrated. The world hummed in unison. For 7 minutes. The planet was one enormous echo chamber. And in that reverb, people began hearing something personal. A pilot over New Mexico heard his daughter's laughter, though she died 5 years before. A nurse in Tokyo heard her own voice, saying words she'd never spoken. A man in Norway claimed the hum whispered the exact date he'd die. Billions listened, and for those 7 minutes, time itself folded backward. Clocks stuttered. GPS systems flickered with coordinates from 2011. For a moment, it was July 3rd again, the day Dana Whitmore vanished. Then everything went quiet. Power returned. But recordings of the event showed something impossible. Across every frequency band, from AM radio to seismic sensors, the waveform spelled a single word, below, followed by coordinates. The same coordinates from Dana's last notebook. The same ones every voice had whispered for 15 years. The world moved on, or tried to. But those who lived near the canyon said something was different. The air was heavier, the wind slower. The rocks seemed to breathe in rhythm, like the canyon had a pulse now, a pulse that didn't belong to the earth. It belonged to everyone who ever listened. The reverb never ends. It just waits for another voice to carry it forward. By 2027, the canyon was closed. No trespass signs. No trails maintained. The government called it a geological instability zone, but people still came. Some out of obsession, some out of belief, and some because the sound in their heads wouldn't stop. They called themselves the returners. Dozens of people from around the world who had heard the canyon tone during the global broadcast. Each claimed they'd been shown something, a vision, a message, or a dream. All of them saw the same place. A narrow chasm lit by blue light, deep beneath Shoshone Point, and a single word carved in stone. Below, among them was Eli Whitmore, Dana's brother, the boy who had once followed her footprints as a child through the dust, and who had spent most of his life trying to erase the sound of her name. He hadn't spoken to journalists in years, but when the tone returned, his silence cracked. He said, "If she's still down there, she's not alone anymore." So he gathered a small team, 2 climbers, a filmmaker, and an old park ranger named Marlon Graves, the same man who first reported Dana missing in 2011. Together, they entered the Grand Canyon at dusk. The descent was brutal, air still, as if the wind itself refused to follow. They moved by headlamp and old instinct. marking their path with chalk the way search teams had once done. At midnight, the first voice came, soft, uncertain, a recording playing through their own radios. Turn back. It was Marlin's voice from 10 years earlier, audio he'd never recorded. The team froze. The transmission cut, then returned distorted. You're already here. That's when they noticed the hum again. Low, constant, coming from the rock itself. It wasn't a broadcast anymore. It was breathing. Hours later, they reached an outcrop that matched the coordinates sent by the global waveform. Eli's drone hovered above it, scanning. The sensors detected a hollow chamber 40 meters below. No cave on record existed there, so they began to dig. Loose sand first, then layers of shale that crumbled like ash. Each strike of the pickaxe echoed a little too long, returning not one sound, but two, one real, one late. Eli pressed his ear to the ground. He swore he could hear music, Dana's favorite song, a 1990s folk tune she used to hum when she climbed. And then, between the melody, a whisper, "Keep going." The tunnel widened, and light began to leak from beneath the stone. Not torchlight, not natural, something cold and white, like the reflection of lightning trapped underground. When they broke through, the air changed. It smelled metallic, like rain inside a machine. The chamber they entered looked carved, not formed. Smooth walls covered in strange grooves, each one shaped like the contour of sound waves. And at the center, a pool of still water. Above it, a shape half floating, half suspended in the shimmer. Not a body, not exactly. A reflection, frozen mid-breath. It was Dana. Her face was serene, her eyes open, but glassy like the reflection wasn't water. It was a window. Beneath her image lay the same cassette recorder she'd carried in 2011, still intact, still recording. The screen blinked, recording 16 years, 11 months, for days. Eli stepped closer, whispering her name. The reflection's lips moved. Not perfectly, but enough. You shouldn't have come. Then the pool rippled, and the reflection blinked out. The recorder ejected its tape. The team played it. The first few seconds were wind, then footsteps, then Dana's voice. The last thing she ever said before vanishing. It's hollow under here, like the ground is waiting. Then static. Then the sound of dozens of other voices joining hers. Not ghosts, recordings. Fragments of every person who'd ever searched for her. Every signal that had ever bounced through the canyon. The walls themselves were made of sound. Compressed memories, replaying endlessly. Marlin, trembling, whispered. She never left. She just became the echo. But Eli wasn't listening anymore. He stared at the rippling pool, seeing his own reflection distort, his face bending, merging with hers. For a second, he saw Dana's smile where it should be. And then, nothing. The others blinked, and Eli was gone. Only his voice remained, repeating through the recorder. We're below now. When rescuers found the site weeks later, there was no chamber, no pool, only a collapsed section of canyon wall. Inside, a single tape recorder still played, but the audio had changed. Now it was a sound of wind through trees. Not canyon wind, but the kind that blows over open meadows. And faintly, a woman's voice, singing that same old folk tune. The timestamp read, "Live." The world moved on again, but for those who heard that last recording, something stayed. Every time the wind touched the canyon rim, you could almost hear her humming. Soft, familiar, alive. She never disappeared. She just changed the way she stayed. The Grand Canyon reopened briefly in the spring of 2028, not for tourism, for closure. A decade had passed since the disappearance of Dana Whitmore, and nearly 2 since her brother, Eli, walked into the canyon and never came back. On that morning, A memorial service was held near the south rim, overlooking the same stretch of stone where a camera was found in 2011. There were no speeches, no music, only a single tape recorder placed on a folding chair. It played nothing but silence until the wind decided to press play. Those who were there said it began as a hum, low, hollow, like the world itself was inhaling. Then came the sound of boots crunching gravel, then a faint laugh, and then a woman's voice. It's quieter now. I can almost see the river again. Her tone was peaceful. No fear, no distortion, just warmth. The way people sound when they're remembering a place, not haunting it. The park officials denied it was Dana's voice. They said it was feedback from nearby devices, a mirage of sound carried by air pressure. But the rangers, the ones who'd been there the longest, didn't say a word. They just bowed their heads and listened. Later that night, a storm rolled over the canyon. Rain hammered the stone like applause. Lightning flashed over the cliffs, illuminating a figure near the rim. Security footage showed it clearly. A man standing barefoot in the rain, arms open to the sky. It was Eli, or someone wearing his exact clothes, frozen mid-motion, as if time had forgotten to move him forward. When rangers reached the spot minutes later, he was gone, but his footprints led nowhere. They began at the edge and ended halfway down the slope, like he had stepped off something invisible. By dawn, the storm had passed, and in the wet earth where the chair once stood, a new cassette tape had appeared, labeled in faint ink, for whoever still listens. Inside was 15 minutes of audio, mostly static, then voices, not interviews, not scientists, not investigators, just people. All the people who have been part of this story in some way. Searchers, witnesses, hikers, and those who swore they'd heard the tone in their dreams, each saying one word: below, wind, remember, home, and finally, a voice no one had ever heard before. Young, clear, male. I found her. Experts studied the tape for months. The audio signature matched neither Dana nor Eli. It matched the frequency of the canyon tone, the same vibration that had circled the planet years earlier, meaning whoever spoke those words wasn't recorded by the tape. They were recorded through it, as if the canyon itself was speaking again, using the magnetic memory left behind by those who had loved it most. The final seconds of the recording held something strange. Background noise, a rhythm, like footsteps echoing through water, and then a phrase, barely audible: "We were never lost." The tape ended there. No one knows where it came from. No one knows who left it. But those who visit the canyon now say that on clear mornings, you can hear two faint voices if you stand still enough, one humming, one answering. Together, they make the canyon sing. 10 years later, in 2038, a new backpacker named Hannah Delaney hiked through Shoshone Point. She wasn't a journalist. She wasn't looking for a mystery. She just wanted silence. But when she reached the overlook, she noticed an old camera buried half in sand. Its screen was cracked, but when she turned it on, it played a single clip: the sky, the cliffs, and a woman's voice whispering, "If someone find this, tell my brother I found it." Then a face filled the frame, eyes bright, sunlight in her hair. She smiled as if she already knew someone someday would see her again. The timestamp read, June 14th, 2028. 17 years after she disappeared. And that's how the story ends. Or refuses to. Because some disappearances aren't about where someone went. They're about how they stayed. In wind, in static, in memory. The canyon still hums sometimes. Not loud enough to record. Just enough to make you stop walking and listen. And in that silence, you might hear it too. Not words, not ghosts, just a voice saying, "Keep going." Some echoes aren't meant to fade. They're meant to find you when you're finally quiet enough to hear them. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. Tell me where in the world you're watching and what time the truth found you.